Before the break, we touched on the term investing and the distinction between short-term and long-term investing. Now, let's look at Kopano Society's second challenge, which is administration and financial literacy. Nomzane Masudubele, good administration is a requirement for any stokvel to be successful. Can you just touch on that correlation?
Yeah, I think what we try to encourage is for stokvels to look at themselves as businesses, as formal businesses. Because without good administration, good record keeping, good bookkeeping, it becomes very difficult to define what success is and to begin noticing what growth is. I mean, a simple thing like, having access to the minutes, having access to decisions you've made, helps you to track whether there's growth or there's no growth. You're also able to have a sense of discipline in terms of setting out an objective and marking all the milestones to say, this is where we need to be, after 6 months, this is where we need to be. And all of those things, you can only really achieve those things if you have good administration in place. So we've seen a lot of stokvels where, through no fault of their own, where keeping records of minutes is a huge challenge simply because people don't have access to a venue that allows for people to keep the necessary minutes and the necessary record keeping. Also, sometimes it's a function of training where someone, hasn't been exposed to how to administer an organization. So some of the things that we do is to encourage people to get in touch with us, and we actually assist with, taking care of that professionalization of stokvels through the administration of that particular stokvel. So administration is very key to the growth of any stokvel.
Now, Kopano Society initially started in 1989. That's a very long time. So certainly there are certain things that they got right.
Yeah.
And there are some certain things that they are lacking of, hence the administration part. But can we just talk about what did they get right?
I think the basics. I think what they got right is that they were very clear in setting out what their objectives were. And at the time, they were very clear and they knew what they wanted to achieve, and they had the tools that would help them to achieve the things that they needed to achieve. And so it worked for a long time. So you'll know that now they're saying they want to get to the next level. So they invested in the taxi business because it's something that they know. So they were equipped with all the tools that they had. So they had a committee and the necessary people in the different committees that could talk to the objectives. Now the objective is changing slightly. It's moving into something that they're not quite au fait with. And now you'll find that once you move into something else, you have to also adjust how you operate, because you've been operating in an environment, knowing and understand the businesses that you're getting into with your objectives. Now you're elevating and moving on to that. So you might need to adjust your processes. So your administration is not also something that's static. It grows. So it's very important for stokvels to say, if we've got an objective, do we have the necessary tools that will help us reach that objective? What are those necessary tools? It's the committees that we have. So now, instead of looking at payouts, you say, right, we're looking at a committee that will help us look at the different investment options. Now they're not looking at the taxi business, but they're looking at options. So what's the caliber of person that we need to chair a subcommittee that looks at investment? What's the type of skill set? So the skill set that you need in our executive committee might not necessarily be the same if we knew that we're investing in A. But if we're changing direction and say our objective has changed, so you then have to say the skill set that we have, these are the skill set. Does the current executive committee have that particular skill set to help us achieve this particular objective? So we try to encourage stokvels to look at it that way, to say, just because you're the most vocal one doesn't necessarily mean you need to be in a committee that looks at investing. You then have to say these are the things that are required. So for instance, if you say who's going to help us with our admin, is it someone who really isn't equipped, is not skilled in the art of admin or doesn't like admin? But because we like them, let's elect them into that position. And then we wonder why we're not moving on that front, because we didn't necessarily look at the right skill set for that particular role, and then attach that skill set to a person who ticks on the boxes for that particular skill set.
Now, Kopano Society mentioned that the reason why they are running away from long-term investing is because of age and other factors like that. But let's just give a direct answer. Can he run away from the 10-year long-term investment?
No. That would be our simple answer. That if you set a goal and you say our goal is to invest, and inherent in investing is long-term, then you can't run away. You can't have it both ways. So if you're looking to grow your wealth and you're looking to invest, long-term invariably is tied to growth, gradual growth. Because what would then happen is that if people say we're aging, you then have to go back and discuss is that the one thing that's nice is that they've spoken about continuity in their group, that they now have new people coming in. And I'd like to imagine that they'd like this Stokvel to continue. So they start...
And grow their members more.
And grow their members more. So you start looking at succession to say, let's not think about this as something that's just for us, because one day we won't be here. So what then becomes the objective of our Stokvel? Is it just for us, or is it for the next generation as well? So we'd like to encourage Stokvels to start thinking of it that way. Remember when we spoke about looking at it as a company, as a standalone. So companies remain standing even though the founder is no longer around, but the sustainability and the continuity becomes important. So that's what Stokvels need to do, and get away from the concept of saying, you know, we're old, therefore we can't look at this. You might not in the short term enjoy the fruits of the investment that you're looking for, but it's just as well when someone is going to continue that legacy. And that someone is someone you would have groomed within your Stokvel. The next generation would then take the Stokvel forward. So the discussion that we'd have with Kopano, for instance, is to say the fact that, you know, you might think that you 5-2 bucket is not something that should be a huge consideration when you're looking at investment. Instead, some things to consider is to say, who can be the beneficiary to what we're trying to build? And then the word legacy kicks into play. So it's no longer just about me, but it's about the collective. And how can the collective grow?
So technically, there's no running away from this. No. Kopano Society, you have to stick to the 10-year and more to go.
Remember also, if you're looking, it's about security. So you can't say you want short-term, high returns. So it also has to do with your risk appetite. So there are instruments that they can look at, but those instruments are high risk, and they're averse. They're not really keen on taking things that are... So there are a lot of things that you have to consider and set, but the direction that we certainly want to encourage people to look at is to say, let's grow this thing beyond just the me and what can I benefit from this, but in the long term, how do we create this generational wealth through the Stokvel?
Well, there's certainly so much for us to get through, but investment Stokvels are established with the view of accessing opportunities that may grow your pooled funds. This may be in the form of interest from a bank account, buying stocks, or establishing or taking part in a business venture, just like how Kopano Society has. Understanding the overall structure of investment Stokvels helps members to identify opportunities to save and invest, and ultimately to accumulate assets. Let's take a short break and stay tuned for more on the Zaka Stokvel Insights.